book lovers, welcome to Authors Love Bookstores, presented by A Mighty Blaze. My name is Kimberly Hensle-Lowrance, and I'm your host today. If you're new to us here in the Mighty Blaze, let me explain a little bit about what we are. A Mighty Blaze is a volunteer effort of writers and creatives who love books, storytelling, authors, and bookstores. We work to bring attention to these essential parts of our culture during COVID-19 and beyond. Authors Love Bookstores is a weekly program that I host in conjunction with fellow writer Joe Moldover. Our goal is to highlight indie bookstores across the US and Canada to tell you what makes them so special and what you can do to support their continued survival. We do this by speaking with booksellers and with the authors who love and appreciate their stores. If you're watching live with us on Facebook, please feel free to post a question for our guests via a comment below the broadcast. We'll get to as many as we can. This interview will also be posted later on YouTube, so please subscribe to A Mighty Blaze's YouTube channel to be alerted when all of the interviews are shared. So now to the interview. I'm so excited today to welcome author Kate Hopeday to Authors Love Bookstores. Hello, Kate. I've been a fan of Kate's, well, ever since I read her very first book, which is called If Then. And let me read to you about this book. It came out in 2019, and Publishers Weekly described it as the following: effortlessly meshing the dreamlike and the realistic, Day's well-crafted mix of literary and speculative fiction is an enthralling mediation on the interconnectedness of all things. Such a good book. I really loved it. So I was so excited when she said yes to join us here today. And then I was even more excited when I found out that her brand new book, In the Quick, is coming out in March. This looks terrible on the screen because of the glare, but Kate can hold. There it is, In the Quick.
Yay.
And yay! It's coming out March 2021. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Kate is joining us to talk about one of her favorite independent bookstores, Grassroots Books and Music in Corvallis, Oregon. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me.
And also here from Grassroots is manager and bookseller Tiffany Harlan. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Hi, Kate.
I love when we have on the author with their local indie, right? The place where you go and you buy your books is the best mix.
Gotta be, yeah.
So tell us a little bit, we have so many questions, but Tiffany, first tell us a little bit about the store. For those of us who have not had the chance to go to Grassroots, tell us a little bit about Corvallis, your customers, a little bit about the community that you serve.
Sure. Well, Grassroots Books is actually the oldest bookstore in Oregon, continuously under the same ownership. Yeah, my boss, one of the co-owners, Jack Wolcott, started it in 1971. So next year it'll be celebrating its 50th anniversary. And he has been the owner the entire time, along with his wife, Sandy Smith. So there's a long legacy of book selling and book loving here. We're in Corvallis, Oregon, which is a college town. We're about 60,000 people, and it's the home of Oregon State University. So we are super fortunate to have lots of literary happenings and music and cultural events. You know, in normal pre-COVID times, there'd be all kinds of things happening, and Grassroots is fortunate to play a big part in events at the university as well. Yeah.
That's remarkable that the bookstore is going to be 50 next year, the same owner, but
yes,
you have that's a whole other like amazing. But the fact that it's still thriving after nearly five decades, it's unusual because you hear a lot, especially in 2020, about independent bookstores having to close up shop. What is it about Grassroots that has made it become such a important part of the community all this time? What's the special sauce?
Lots of things. I think the fact that Grassroots has always been able to kind of change and adapt as the community has grown and changed. It started as an outgrowth from a natural foods co-op that they began the year prior to the store. And Jack and his partners realized that people wanted to be kind of back to the land at that time and in the 70s. And, people needed to educate themselves. So it started with lots of cookbooks and gardening books and farming books and how to. And, then as the community changed a little bit more and the university's role, grew bigger and more young families moved in, then it increased its children's book section, which is near and dear to my heart, because I come to it from a background in children's books. I was a bookseller at a children's only store in Los Angeles for 15 years before I moved to Oregon.
I did not know that, Tiffany.
Yes, yeah. But back to, Grassroots, now very much we've kind of moved into sort of a literary, I don't want to say mainstream, but definitely a literary bookstore with a big emphasis on fiction, science, autobiography, memoir, nature writing, all have really kind of sections that have grown as the interests of our customers have grown. But I think the biggest thing that has kept Grassroots here and healthy and thriving all this time is our community and our community of book lovers. Corvallis does an amazing job of really celebrating and supporting local businesses. We have an active downtown with lots of small, independently owned local businesses, and customers truly make the choice to buy local when they can. And that's what allows us to be here. We just never take that for granted, because that's why we're here 50 years almost later.
That's true. And so, Kate, you're one of these customers.
I am.
Yeah.
So tell us about your relationship with Grassroots. When did it start? When was the first time you walked through the door?
Well, I think Grassroots may have been the first shop I went into when we moved to Corvallis 9 years ago. And I think it's just been a really wonderful constant in my life through a lot of change. We moved here with a toddler, and I had barely written any fiction. I was in a PhD program, and I had written a lot of essays about books, but hadn't written any novels or even short stories of my own. And over the course of that time, I started writing, and my kids were little, and we were in the bookstore a lot in the children's section. And when I got sort of more serious about my writing, I actually have a workspace. I'm not there right now because the internet there's not great, but I have a workspace sort of right across the block from Grassroots. So I can actually look out my window and see their sign. Not quite close enough to wave to Tiffany in her little balcony.
Almost.
But it's just been a wonderful part of going downtown just as a shopper, but also as a writer. If I get stuck, or I just, sort of ran out of inspiration for the day, or I just want to take a break, I have this little circuit I do. As Tiffany knows, they're right next to the best coffee shop in town, Tried and True Coffee.
Absolutely.
I often will do a thing where I'm like, I have to write this number of words, then I can go get my coffee. Then I'll kind of meander down with my coffee and see what's new on the new books table. And if I'm stuck, I'll go in and read the first page of some books, and I always, end up buying something, of course. And it's just been like a wonderful way to keep books in my mind, even when I'm not having a writing day.
Right. Now, Tiffany, is the store open now? So Kate has just set this great scene for us about how she walks. I can sort of see her walking through town, getting a coffee.
I still do that during COVID times.
Yeah. We are open right now. We've been super fortunate that during the pandemic, even in March, when the governor of Oregon had basically shut down everything non-essential, we were bookstores are essential, and we were allowed to do curbside pickup and home delivery. So I've been working the entire time behind the scenes. And then in late May, we were able to have customers back in the store for in-person browsing. Everyone has to be masked and practicing social distancing, but it has been such a joy to have people back in the bookstore physically.
I know for me, when we got the stay-at-home order here in Massachusetts, I went to my local independent bookstore to stock up on books before I went to the grocery store. So,
Oh, you were smart.
because I knew that I was home with children, that we needed to have that. And there's nothing, you need the book in your hands, right? Like, I don't know. I'm old school. I love to hold the
Yep.
book. Makes it.
I did that too. And I think I saw Tiffany was one of the last people I saw.
I think you told me that.
Yes. I bought puzzles. They have a great puzzle section. I bought puzzles. I bought books for the kids, and then I can't remember exactly what I bought for myself, but several things for myself. And then when you open back up, I think you were one of the first stores I went to after like not having gone anywhere.
Right, right. We were excited to be a lot of people's first destination out, besides grocery stores.
Yeah. Well, the bookstore is such, in so many communities, it is more than a place where you buy books, right? It is a place where people come together, share ideas. And so I can imagine well, I don't have to imagine, I know in a time like this, what we all want is connection. And in lieu of being able to get together, getting a book that a bookseller recommends, it's a joy that we all need, right? So I can imagine what a great pleasure it was to you to see customers in the store again.
Truly, truly.
So tell us, because our viewers always want to know, what books are popular in the store right now? Because we've talked to booksellers across the country, so it's so interesting to see what's very popular and in one part of the country versus another. What do you see people are buying?
Oh, wow. I mean, throughout the entire pandemic, we initially with Willis Kate said jigsaw puzzles were really big for a while, and they still are. But once all of the protests across the country erupted this summer, and people's awareness of racial inequity and injustice, we found our customers wanting to educate themselves. So we have sold many copies of things like Ibram Kendi's How to Be Anti-Racist, and his new wonderful picture book and board book version, Anti-Racist Baby, and White Fragility, and Isabella Wilkerson's wonderful Cast. So our community, we just had an outpouring of people wanting to educate themselves on these really important topics. And so that's something we've sold lots of copies of and, are continuing to sell. But during pandemic too, people want distractions. I think they want respite and relief from everything that's going on. So we've seen popular mysteries. We have a big mystery fans here. Louise Penny's All the Devils Are Here. Yeah, people have loved that. Carl Hyacin, Squeeze Me. Good, funny mystery. Some more serious fiction. Britt Bennett's The Vanishing Half has done really well. Fans of Hilary Mantel, we're thrilled to have her continuation of the Wolf Hall. So Mirror and the Light. We also We have a lot of customers who love nature writing. And I think bird watching has become really big for a lot of people
Yeah.
during the pandemic. And we're fortunate that we have a lot of natural areas around us and great places to bird watch. So the David Allen Sibley's What It's Like to Be a Bird has been a really big seller for us.
Right.
Robin Timmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. Just that's not a new title, but there's a gorgeous new hardcover illustrated version. And speaks of indigenous wisdom and role of nature, and that the new version of that has been doing really well. So just kind of across the board, things that people take them out of themselves for a while.
And Kate, what about you? Anything that you've been reading these couple of months during the pandemic that you found to be inspiring or joyful or offered?
Yeah, well, I definitely, being home with my kids in a way that I haven't been since they were babies. We have been doing a lot more hikes where we try to figure out what tree, what that is, which kind of pine tree that is, and sort of, we've been reading a lot of books about native Oregon species and things like that. Part of my kids' homeschool curriculum from the school is keeping a nature journal. So along the lines of what Tiffany was just talking about, I suddenly have a lot of, this wasn't really necessarily something that was a hobby of mine before, but now we've sort of collected a lot of books about species and plants, and I ended up, along with the kids, since they were sitting there with me, I have a little like wildflower journal where I draw the wildflower that I saw.
Oh, nice.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. But as for novels, I've read a kind of a hodgepodge of things. I remember I bought Rodham at Grassroots, and I read that, and I had just so many thoughts about that book, and it's super fascinating, especially the voice. I think I've been, unlike, I don't tend to read things the day they come out. I tend to buy them and then put them on my shelf, and then at some point when it feels right, I will read them. But I think because I just haven't had that connection with other writers and readers, I've tended to read things actually like when they come out. So Maggie O'Farrell's Hamnet I had just come out, and I've been reading that right now. So it's kind of interesting because for once in my life I can actually sort of engage in the Instagram conversations about books that have just come out, because usually I'm like, oh well, I'll get to that. I don't know, it just needs to be the right moment, and then
Right.
I really want to talk about it. No one else wants to talk. They're like, I read that 2 years ago. Yeah, I also read some things that other people read a long time ago, including Conversations with Friends, Normal People. I read Call Me by Your Name, which I hadn't read, which was spectacular. The other thing I've been doing during pandemic times, which I don't tend to do, is I have been finishing every book I start. I don't know what that means. Normally I'm a start it, and if it's not, I'll give it like 50 pages. I often will set it down and, often not go back to it. But I have been finishing my books this time around. It's kind of interesting. So I know a lot more endings now than I did in prior years.
You'd be a great bookseller, Kate. We joke about that, that you have to pick up lots and lots of books to be able to, sell them to customers, but you don't have time to read every book you start. So
the whole thing. Right, exactly. Yes, I've read about a fourth to a half of a whole lot of books. But yeah, it's been interesting. I will say, I think it started with a couple of books that I wasn't fully connecting with in the first 50 pages, but I decided for whatever reason to give it a chance, and then I ended up loving the book. So I think I sort of have learned a little lesson there. The book that did it for me was Less. at first I was kind of like, I don't know, and I almost stopped reading it, but then I stuck with it, and it ended up being probably my favorite book of that year. So I've been trying to sort of see what the second half of books actually about.
But that's good advice, right? That's good advice for everyone.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
you
I
Definitely.
think
give
if
it a
you're
little bit
truly
more.
hating something, it's totally okay to stop reading. I mean, I
Absolutely.
but but if you're
If you're
not
on the
sure,
fence,
I think
yeah.
it's probably, yeah, a good idea to stick with it a little longer.
So the other thing that you've been doing during pandemic, and I know this because we follow each other on social media, so I'm not being weird, is that you've been writing,
I
which,
have been. It's
which
the only thing keeping me sane.
so tell us, because we have a lot of writers who watch us on A Mighty Blaze. How are you able to fuel your creative muscle? That didn't work, that image didn't work, fuel muscle, but anyway, how are you able to
I know
inspire
what you mean.
yourself during a time when so much is
Yeah.
uncertain?
A whole lot of writers I know are just, they're tapped out. They're schooling their children.
Yes.
They, don't have childcare like they used to. They have a lot of uncertainty, financial uncertainty. And then there's just like the news component of like your phone is always there and there's always something new and horrible to look at on your phone. And I think it is hard. It helped that I had a project underway, not underway in a big way, but underway in the sense that I had a main character and a setting, and I was kind of started going with it before the pandemic started. And I think it helps that my main character is the kind of person I want to be right now. She's just like a really like powerful, kind of strong woman who's like enduring things that she'd rather not go through, but she's like getting through to the other side. There's something about spending time with her that it's been helpful to me. I think if I was writing a different kind of book, it might be hard to open up the laptop. The other thing that I've found is that I have some tricks from when my kids were babies, which I had totally sort of given up because I had these stretches of time to write in a way that I didn't back then. But I've sort of gone back to some of those things that I did when I would only have, a little bit of time, 15 minutes, hide in the bathroom, read a draft. And so some of the things that I've been doing, I set one kid up on an iPad and then the other one is doing something and maybe I'll have like 15-20 minutes is one of the main challenges with trying to write in such small amounts of time is that it's hard to get into it, right? And so you can spend easily 15-20 minutes just like getting back into whatever it is you were working on. And I found that if I set myself a timer and I just do a free write, I can actually sort of get back into whatever or at least I'll figure something out. Something will happen, and then I'll feel at least like I've gotten somewhere. The other thing I've been doing, which is something I do whenever I'm on a deadline, and now I just sort of do it all the time during pandemic, is that whatever I've accomplished that day, I will print out and I just carry those pages around with me. Maybe I look at them, maybe I don't, but I will be able to just kind of, I'm waiting to pick up a kid from something. It used to be I'd carry pages around and I'd always be sitting at the side of the aquatic center while my kids were doing their swim practice. Now I'm sort of in my car or, here and there waiting to pick someone up, or I have a few minutes before I have to go into an appointment or something. And I just always have the pages with me. And so I will look at them, maybe jot some notes. And it's not that it does that much in terms of like forwarding the project, but it keeps the project alive in my mind, which I feel like is the number one challenge when you're working on like anything that's long form. So novel, memoir, is just if you have to step away from it, which life right now, you're constantly stepping away from it, is to sort of keep it alive in your mind in whatever way that you can. So my carrying my pages around everywhere is one of the things I've been doing to do that.
That's great advice. Because you're also giving yourself tools to let your subconscious work through the story in these moments when you might just pull up Instagram, right? And you might just go read the news.
Because your brain will work on it. I often will
Mhm.
read whatever I wrote that day before bed. And even if I don't make notes or anything, my brain will be working on it, sort of like background. And often that next day, something will come to me that I don't know if it would have if I hadn't, read that scene before bed.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
And then you have a new book coming out. So
I do.
congratulations. This is very
Thank
exciting.
you.
Yay!
I got an advanced reader copy. I'm such a greedy reader. I love all books, but I love getting the chance to read a book early. So, In the Quick is coming out in March, and do you want to tell our viewers about it? It's about an astronaut. Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah, I will. I'll give you a little short version, and then maybe I'll say a little more.
it?
I'm so excited to share this with readers. Um, this character lived in my mind for a long time before I ever wrote her down. She was in my head for most of the revision of If Then, and I wouldn't let myself write anything until I finished If Then. So I feel like I've lived with June, the main character, for several years now, and I love her. I'm not sick of her yet. um, so the short kind of pitch for In the Quick is that if you liked The Martian, but wished it was just a little more literary about a woman and had a love story, then you will like the In the Quick. Sort of the longer version of what the book is about is that it follows June, and she's a kind of brilliant but a little difficult girl who has this gift for mechanical invention. And she leaves home to start this kind of grueling astronaut training program. And so part of the book is set in a kind of like boarding school / space camp type situation. And so she really excels in her classes, but she doesn't, she kind of struggles with making friends and really finding people that understand her. And so 6 years later, the book kind of jumps ahead. She's gained a post on a sort of coveted post on a space station as an engineer. And she's sort of found the friends and the belonging that she's been wanting. But in the back of her mind, she's always thinking about Inquiry, which is a sort of revolutionary spacecraft that went missing when she was younger. And it's kind of especially important to her because it was powered by her beloved late uncle's fuel cells. And as the book unfolds, she realizes she thinks she has evidence that the crew is still alive. And so she seeks out her uncle's former protege, and the two of them start to work on figuring out what went wrong with this fuel cell. And as they're working, they form an intense intellectual bond, and they also have this kind of electric attraction. And so the love that develops between them is as they're working, it starts to cause some problems and threatens everything that they have accomplished so far, and threatens the chance of bringing the Inquiry crew home alive.
It sounds fabulous.
It's such a great read. I really love how determined she is and how resourceful. In a time when we feel paralyzed, I mean, it just feels like an antidote to that, right? Here's this person who determines there's a solution and can take things apart and put them together and imagine things.
Yeah, she's a problem solver. I've heard that from so many early readers. They're like, I love how persistent she is. Like, we need that kind of energy right now. And I agree. I need that energy right now too.
And so for readers who haven't, for viewers who haven't read your books yet, you write fiction, but how would you describe your books? Are they speculative fiction? Are they literary fiction with a sci-fi twist? Where would you place your books?
I mean, all of those I'm totally cool with.
Okay.
I think, and also it kind of depends on who's in the crowd. Sometimes speculative makes sense to a reader, but other readers that's not sort of their, what they connect with the book. So sometimes I'm more inclined to say literary with a speculative twist for readers who are much more interested in like the characters. They are character driven novels.
Yes.
If you want like a hard sci-fi book, which is mostly about the technology and what happens, these aren't exactly that, but it definitely has. This book in particular kind of it checks a lot of boxes. It has sort of this coming of age, strong woman character. It has adventure. It has a mystery. So it kind of gets to be in a lot of categories, which is sometimes not like challenging, but I think in the case of this book, it's actually turning out to be a good thing.
I think that's probably great because you can reach out to more readers.
Yes, yeah, it's a kind of wider range of readers that can connect with it. Yeah.
Excellent. And so that book is out in March 2021.
Yeah, March 2nd, 2021, and I just got my galleys, and this is
such a
Yay!
And so we're going to put some information below the broadcast for people who would like to pre-order the book, which is always appreciated and always helpful.
It's such a good thing for authors, and it's also such a good thing for bookstores because they know how many books to order, and they're able to plan ahead.
So I want to, Tiffany, I want to ask you some more questions about the bookstore, but we just got an audience question in for Kate. So let me ask that one first, if you don't mind. Audience would like to know, it doesn't say who it's from. The audience would like to know what kind of research you did for the new book. Do you have a background in space or engineering? How did you?
I do not.
Kate, how did you get informed on this topic? How did you fall into it?
So I'm not a scientist in any shape or form. However, in graduate school, I did study history and philosophy of science. So I have done a lot of thinking about the history of science and sort of how the story of science gets told. And a lot of that did factor into this book in some kind of peripheral ways. But I did do some sort of, real research to get the technical aspects of the book right. I definitely read a lot of astronaut memoirs. I thought A Year in Space by Scott Kelly is a great book, and I loved it. And it was an important book as I was writing, but I almost sort of kind of enjoyed the less edited memoirs a little more because they would have just these great details in them. So I read a lot of sort of Russian cosmonaut memoirs from like the 70s. And things like that had all this sort of really interesting kind of personal and technical detail, and a lot about how astronauts experience space in terms of their bodies. And I also went to space camp. Yes, adults can go to space camp.
What?
I did, which was a really fun, challenging, like hilarious experience. Obviously before COVID. I did this sort of adult version of space camp, and I did a simulated spacewalk where I was in a suit. This was one of the reasons why I really wanted to go. I wanted to understand what it felt like inside a spacesuit and sort of like how it actually feels when you're trying to hold on to a tool, because it looks fairly awkward, but I did not fully comprehend how awkward it is, how challenging it is to move in that like very large suit. But the way they do the simulated space walk is they attach you to this cable, and the cable's attached to the ceiling, and you're on this what used to be a shuttle. Now obviously it's not, but I would sort of like pull myself along, and I'm hanging like above the shuttle, and I had a tool, and I was supposed to like do a repair. I mean, obviously it wasn't like a real repair, but I had to, fix something the way they would. And it was really hard.
That is really fun author research. I have to say, I am very jealous. That sounds so great. Oh, wow. I want to go reread the book now and think about that when I go to the sections where they're out in space moving around and fixing things. Oh, that's
Yeah.
terrific.
Yeah.
Were your kids jealous of you,
Yeah.
Kate?
Yeah, that was the only problem. I thought about doing, they have a family program where you can go with your kids, and I just realized there was no way I was going to be able to take notes and really kind of concentrate. So I went by myself, and I have to say they still haven't forgiven. They were pretty upset, and I told them, "Oh, maybe we would go," but then that was this summer, and obviously we weren't going anywhere this summer. But hopefully, at some point, they will get to go.
Kate, we're hearing from audience members that they too love the cover of this book.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hold it up again?
Yeah.
It is. I mean, I don't recall, and Tiffany, you will know much more than I
Mhm.
do. How often do we see color covers of this color? We usually don't really see pink.
That's true. You
So
don't see pink very often.
really jumps off the bookshelf, off the library shelf. It's really terrific.
It pops. Well, we had quite the discussion about, I felt strongly that I wanted it to be an astronaut in a suit, but it's about a woman, and we wanted to like flag that in a big way. And so my agent she had it in her head. She said it has to be pink. And when she first said it, I was like, I don't know about that. But then once we actually sort of saw what it could look like, I was absolutely convinced.
And narratively, it makes sense because part of the book takes place on
It totally does.
the pink planet.
On
So,
the pink planet. Yes,
okay.
exactly. There's a lot of pink silt and rocks and stuff like that in the book. So, yes.
So we may not be going to space camp anytime soon, but we can definitely imagine that experience by reading your book. And so we encourage people to follow the link below, go pre-order a copy. And the
Yeah.
other thing we could do is find out more about Grassroots, right? So let's talk a little bit more about the bookstore. Tiffany, have you been doing online events with authors? Because in real time or before times, you would hold community events at the store. So that's not something we can do right now.
No.
How has the transition been to the online events?
We are doing online events. We're doing Zoom events, some of our own with local authors, some in conjunction with other local organizations. Everybody's having to make this big leap to something totally different. But we are finding, I mean, one thing that's great is you have no geographic limitations. I mean, here you're in Massachusetts and we're in Oregon and we're having this conversation. So people can join in, from anywhere. And I think that that's been really freeing. People can sit around in their pajamas at home, participate, maybe viewers, hopefully, perhaps not the author. And so I think we're getting people showing up for events who might not come downtown, especially maybe on a wintry, rainy evening, might not want to drive and come downtown, but can, join in on a virtual event. So, it's still kind of a work in progress, but we're trying to embrace it as much as we can.
And in the before times when you did have live events or people could come
Mhm.
together, can you tell us about one that was particularly memorable, like one that's a favorite of yours?
We were talking about that recently, and honestly, probably the most memorable bookstore events, live events, were our Harry Potter parties.
Yes,
We
that's
miss
what I
them.
said.
Yeah, we miss them so much. We miss having like a big, big book that is an occasion that people want to come out at midnight and wait in line around the block. Hundreds of people of all ages, little kids in costumes, and all the way up to college age and grown-ups, people who are united because they're passionate about a book and can't wait to get their hands on the brand new, book in a series. So those were really magical.
My kids are reading the Harry Potter books now, and that's always so fun when they
Yeah,
sort of fall into a story like that that's so engrossing. So yeah,
definitely.
it's fun to hear about it from your perspective as a bookseller, that was like so exciting to have customers come together like that.
Yeah, it was magical, and we're still kind of looking for, all live events, are special, but looking for that just united communal, so many people, coming together around a single book. So we're still always looking for that next one.
Now, Kate, as we've discussed, this is your local, very local, across the street from your writing spot. What else do you want our viewers to know about Grassroots? Anything you want to ask Tiffany? Any stories that you want to share, so we can fully appreciate the magic?
Well, the one thing I did want to say, in case there are, people who are local or local-ish listening, is that, I think when I think of Grassroots, it's not a big store, but it's so what they've chosen to put on the shelves is really thoughtful. And whenever I go in there, I always find something that I want to get. So it's a great browsing store, which is why I think it's so great that you've been able to open back up for browsing, because there's nothing I like better than going and looking seeing what's on the table, or what's face out. And the one thing I always try to tell people also is that if Grassroots doesn't have what they are looking for, they can order it and it will come fast. Like oftentimes just as fast or faster than Amazon. I think people have in their minds that it takes a really long time, and it's like this whole thing, and it really isn't. You just call them up on the phone. It's super easy. You don't even have to stare at a screen, although you can order online as well. And you can even say, hey, is this any good? Should I order this? And they will let you know. And I've really taken advantage of that, especially with, especially when the library was closed for a while and my kids were home. We got a whole bunch of like extra activity books and new picture books and new chapter books for my older kid. And I did want to mention in the events, category, I think my launch event was so special, and it was packed. I remember it's such a weird memory now because you couldn't have this, but it was just people all the way back into the shelves and sort of like back out into the children's section. And that's such a wonderful memory. But I have to say, if I had to choose my favorite event that goes on at Grassroots, it would be how they participate in Where's Waldo, which is this fantastic local event where kids sort of get this punch card thing and they find Waldo in each local store. And so you'll spend, I think it's a week or two in the summer going to all the shops, finding Waldo. And then if you fill out your card, you're in a raffle to win books or other prizes at Grassroots. And this is my kid's favorite summertime activity. And I love it because we end up going to all the places I like to go to like Grassroots and Tried and True Coffee. It's an excuse to go and wander around, and the kids get a Waldo book and I get a new novel, and everyone's happy.
Hopefully we'll be able to resurrect that next summer. We missed being able to do it this year.
Yeah. So one last thing I want to talk about is that what we're hearing from a lot of independent bookstores is that holiday shopping ideally would start now.
Exactly.
That we don't want customers to wait until the week before Christmas because of publishing delays and whatnot. It can be harder to get books. There's also, as we know, the Obama book's coming out, and that's going to be huge. And other books are coming out in the fall. Anything you want to pass along to our viewers about holiday shopping other than start it early?
I know. Definitely, support local, order from Grassroots. As Kate said, we are a smaller store and we can't have every single book on our shelves. So we do have to carefully curate what we have room for, but we are happy to get any book that's in print that we can. I order all the time and we'll be amping up ordering. It'll be like a daily experience. Call us, use our website. Website orders are fabulous because they come directly into our inventory system. And, curate, make lists, contact us. We're going to see about maybe setting up some special hours where, people who are concerned about being in the bookstore, where we may have some hours set aside for, kind of shopping by appointment, emailing us your lists ahead of time, be prepared, maybe have names and ages, and if you have ideas of what you'd like, come with a list, either of particular books you want to look at, or particular topics. Maybe let us do some research for you ahead of time so that your time in the store isn't a lot of just wandering around aimlessly looking at shelves, but that we can help you for kind of a more personalized experience.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. So definitely the hallmark there is your indie bookstore bookseller is there to help you and to find the
Definitely.
right books for you. You're not alone in your search to find the perfect gift, right?
Definitely. Our new, there's a holiday catalog that the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Association puts out every year that we participate in, and that catalog will be coming out next month. So we'll have physical copies in the store. We'll also have it on our website. It will go out in our local newspaper. So people should watch for that because it's always a wonderful selection of new titles. Oh, and definitely too, for people who don't subscribe to our newsletter, please, you can sign up online on our website and that information will be on your screens. So sign up. We have a weekly newsletter called the Grassroots Reader, and we blurb brand new books. We list our virtual events, and children's books as well as adults. And we also, during the pandemic, have been putting out what we call the Grassroots Irregular that comes out, periodically, one or two extra times a week. It was a brainchild of my boss, Jack, and it's just meant to be fun, trivia about books, interviews with not local, but just authors, author book lists, kind of just information about books to keep people connected during this crazy time we're all living in.
Great. And so the bookstore website is grassrootsbookstore.com. So definitely hop over there and sign up for the newsletter and find out about the upcoming events that you might want to attend. And to learn more about Kate's events, because you'll be doing a bunch of those to promote the book as well, you can check out her website, katehopeday.com. Definitely check out In the Quick, coming out March 2nd, 2021. We hope that you'll enjoy that book. Thank you so much, Kate and Tiffany, for being here today. I'm so grateful to spend the time with both of you. Thank you. And to all of our viewers, thank you so much for being part of Authors Love Bookstores today. Please join us back here next Wednesday for another interview. Until then, be well, keep reading, and don't forget to vote. So,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Good